morning, y'all. I don't know why I always seem to record these when my hair is still wet, but it is what it is. So, it's a little late in the semester, but I'm introducing another skill because I noticed that you guys didn't do so well on this when you're with your benchmark, and a lot of students tend to struggle with it anyway. And it's how to find the structure and organization of a nonfiction text and see how all the parts and details of the text relate to each other and work together to accomplish the author's purpose. Alright, so I'm going to start by going through some of the different organizational structures you might see in nonfiction text and then the different kinds of graphic organizers we can use to summarize the information that is contained in these articles and how it relates to each other. I'm going to try and go through this fast because I know most of it is review for you. So, one way you can see a nonfiction article organized is description. You won't see this too often at your particular reading level, but maybe you'll see it sometimes or in an individual paragraph. So description is when the author describes what a particular topic is like, what it looks like, smells like, what it does, what it tastes like, where it comes from, just details about one particular topic. So let's say for some reason you were reading an article about ice cream. You might make a bubble map where you put the topic, ice cream, in the middle, and then surrounding it you have the different details about the ice cream. It's sweet, it's made from milk and sugar, it's cold, often you eat it in the summer, it comes in a lot of flavors, and it's eaten all over the world. Okay, now for one you will probably see more often, especially in articles that are about a historical topic or how-to articles or recipes. They usually are written in a sequential or chronological order, meaning that they are written in the order that things happen. If it specifies specific times, like if it's an article about history and it says like in 1940 and then in 1945, then it would be chronological. But if it's, say, a how-to article about, I don't know, how to make ramen, it would be like first, boil the water. Next, put the noodles in the water. That would be sequential because there is no specific time attached to the steps in the recipe. Okay, so some signal words you can look for when you're trying to see if something is sequential or chronological are things like first, second, third, next, then, after, before, at 5 p.m., for example, or in 1920. So what this looks like is usually a flow chart. Let's say you were reading something about the lifetime of a person. First thing that happens is they're born. Then they learn to walk and speak. Then they go to school, and then they become an adult. Obviously leaving a lot of details out here, but this would be sequential because it doesn't give us a specific time for when these things happen. Another structure that you might be familiar with is compare-contrast. That is when the author tells how two subjects are similar and how they are different. Sometimes they might make a value judgment. They might be arguing that one is better than the other, or they might just be comparing them. You never know. Some signal words you might see here are similar to, differs from, alike, same as, or either or sentence structures. So let's say you're reading an article where somebody is comparing and contrasting Superman and Batman. In this circle, we have things that only describe Superman, and in this circle, we have things that only describe Batman. In the middle, we have things that describe both of them. So both of them have alter egos. Superman's alter ego is Clark Kent. Batman's alter ego is Bruce Wayne. They both save people and fight villains, and they both came from DC Comics. Superman is an alien. He can fly on his own, and he has actual superpowers, unlike Batman, who's just very rich and uses a lot of gadgets, and he also drives a really cool car called the Batmobile. Another type of organization that you might see, particularly with history articles, are cause and effect. So when you see something historical, don't automatically assume it's chronological, because it could be cause and effect, or even a combination of the two. You also see cause and effect a lot with scientific articles, and that's what I've chosen for my example here. But with cause and effect, you might discuss one cause and several effects that come from it, or you might discuss several causes and one effect that comes from it. Some signal words you might see are if-then statements, like if you are obese, you might develop high blood pressure. or other phrases like reasons why, because, therefore, as a result, caused by, outcome, or influenced by. If you're reading an article about obesity, it might say that obesity causes high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. Or a different article on obesity might say that obesity is caused by a high-calorie diet, a sedentary lifestyle, and stress. One organizational structure that is easy to confuse with cause and effect is problem and solution. Really, the only difference is that with problem and solution, it's specifically talking about, well, a problem and a solution. And a lot of times, the solution has not even happened yet. Whereas in cause and effect, it's usually talking about something that's already happened. Some single words you might see with this are problem or issue, solved, question and answer, difficulties, possible solutions, challenges, therefore, and then the if-then statements we were talking about before. So these articles or texts might talk about one problem and then multiple solutions to it. So if we're talking about the problem of water pollution, two possible solutions might be enforcing environmental regulations, actually punishing people who dump things in the water that they shouldn't, and then educating the public on the problem, because they might not know that it's not okay to put certain things in the water. Another way this might be accomplished is by describing several problems that have the same solution. So let's say we're talking about plastics. So plastics are killing animals in the wild. When people litter, particularly, plastics are filling up landfills because they don't degrade over time. Producing plastics uses fossil fuels, which of course contributes to climate change. All of these problems could be solved by reducing our usage of plastics, which we use way too many of already. The last type of structure I'm going to talk about is topical. This is the most common structure, and also the map that I'm going to show you works for any nonfiction article. You will read it all, but it's also the most difficult, but I think it also teaches you an analytical way of thinking that can transfer to other areas of your life. In other words, practicing this makes you a better reader, and it also makes you smarter. Win-win. So to show you how to make a topic map, I'm going to briefly summarize this really interesting article, and then show you how I would make a topic map using this article. So our headline is Cheddarman DNA shows early Britons had dark skin and blue eyes. Okay, so Cheddarman is this old body that they found in England, and they were analyzing his DNA. And oh yeah, if you didn't know, Britons are people from Britain, the island that England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales are on. In other words, the United Kingdom. Okay, so they were looking at Cheddarman's DNA, and they analyzed it, and they found out that actually the earliest people to live in Britain were not pale like most people who live in Britain are today, but they actually had dark skin and blue eyes. So a really cool article. Let me know if you're interested in reading it. I had to read this 2 or 3 times to really narrow down what the main topics explored were, and it kind of jumps between different topics, so that was really challenging. But the 3 things it mainly talks about are describing Cheddarman, what he looked like, how he lived. They talk about DNA and genetics, and then they talk about the history of European traits. So I'm going to go back through the article, and I'm going to label the most significant details I see about each of these 3 topics. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to label them A, B, and C. You could also highlight different colors if you want to do it that way. You could write into the side. However you want to do it. There's not one correct answer here. And I will be back in a couple minutes after I finish doing this. Alright, so after going back and rereading for these specific details, I kind of revised what the 3 main topics were, so even I can make mistakes here. But I don't think it talked enough about DNA and genetics to be considered a major topic, so I actually switched B to skin color. So as you can see, I looked through the whole article here, and I labeled the details that I thought were most important with which topic they fit into. So like here, where it says the skeleton of a 10,000-year-old man was found in a cave in Cheddar Gorge. I labeled that with A because it's talking about the Cheddar Man. And then here, where it's talking about the reason why people in northern regions such as Europe had pale skin, I labeled that with B because it's talking about skin color. When it's talking about where the group of people Cheddar Man would have been among, the ancient Western hunter-gatherers, I labeled that with C because it's talking about the history of European traits. So I just did that for the whole article. So now I'm going to get to the part on how to actually create the topic map, which once again works for all types of text structures, but especially well if the text is organized topically like this is. It doesn't really fit into any of the other text structures we talked about. So at the top of my map, I just put the headline, or the title of the article, and then in the next row underneath it, I divided it into the 3 main topics that are discussed. Underneath these, I'm going to see if I can divide these topics any further into any particular categories until I've incorporated all of the details that are contained within this article. Well, all of the most important details anyway. It's kind of like writing a summary, except it's more in a visual form, and you're also showing the relationship between the different details in the article. So after looking back at the article again, I decided that the 3 main things they talk about with the Cheddar Man are his appearance, what he looked like, how he lived, and then why he is significant even today, or in modern times. With skin color, they didn't really talk about it much beyond just 1 paragraph, and I think specifically they talk about the reasons why people developed pale skin, because originally everybody had dark skin. But since that's really the only thing they talk about with skin color, I'm putting that under this layer. And then with the history of European traits, I wanted to talk about what Europeans looked like in the past, what Europeans look like today, and the origins of where Europeans came from. So now I have finished filling in my topic map. So what I did was I looked for all the details that were about each of these topics. So the whole map is, you put the topic of the whole article at the top, the main things that it discusses. It might be 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, 5 things. In this case it was 3. And even I really could have combined skin color with history of European traits, but there's more than one right way to do it. I further divide those main topics into the main topics underneath those. So for Cheddar Man, that was his appearance, his life, and his modern significance. So under appearance, it said he had blue eyes, dark skin, and curly hair. Under his life, he lived in modern-day England. He was a hunter-gatherer, ate a healthy diet, and died in his 20s. And he's significant today because he was discovered in 1903, which in the scheme of things is not that long ago, and his DNA challenges beliefs about when pale skin developed. Under skin color, I have the reasons for pale skin, and we believe that lighter skin helps with vitamin D absorption, which is why people who live in areas that don't get as much sunlight tend to have lighter skin. Then under the history of European traits, I put in the past, they had darker skin. Today, they have lighter skin, and their origins, they came from the East about 5,000 years ago. I know this can be confusing to figure out, so if you're having trouble with this assignment at all, please ask me for help and I will walk you through it. Have a good day.